So good afternoon, everyone. As you're coming into the webinar, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat, just give us your name and where you are coming from. We'll start in about a minute as we let people filter into the presentation. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm Ramona Kunkel with the Maryland Department of Labor, and just want to welcome everyone to Virtual Training Institute 8.0. And today we have with us Morgan Williams, and her presentation is Your Vibe, Creating a Harmonious Frequency in Your Classroom. But before we get started, I just want to take care of a few little housekeeping items. You will receive a proof of participation automatically from Zoom. So in about 24 hours from now, you will also get an evaluation when the presentation ends. So please feel free to fill those out for us. This is in webinar format, so you will not be able to unmute yourself, but please feel free to use the chat and even the Q&A section features. So before we get started, we're going to go ahead and launch a poll so that we know who we have with us today. So if you could go ahead and just indicate what your role is in adult education, that would be helpful. Okay, so far we have most of our participants are instructors with a few instructional specialists and even fewer program administrators. And that really makes up our, so I'll go ahead and share those results. And as you can see, the majority are instructors. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that Morgan can go ahead and share her screen and give us her presentation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's training. Again, my name is Morgan Williams. And our training today will be Your Vibe, Creating a Harmonious Frequency in Your Classroom. So hopefully this is helpful and useful and informative to you all. As a disclaimer with VTI, the content or opinions expressed in this presentation do not necessarily reflect or present the views, positions, or policies of the Maryland Department of Labor, nor does the mention of trade names, commercial products, or organizations imply an official endorsement by the Maryland Department of Labor. So just have to give that disclaimer. Okay, so our purpose and goals. The purpose of this workshop is going to be to provide a comprehensive exploration of how educators can cultivate a positive and conducive learning environment by understanding and harnessing the power of classroom dynamics. Also, we want to provide insight into nuances of teacher-student interactions, emotional intelligence, and effective communication strategies that resonate with students' unique backgrounds and learning styles. And then lastly, the goals of the workshop are to teach educators how creating a harmonious frequency within their classroom will allow you to foster inclusivity, engagement, and a sense of belonging, ultimately, which will enhance the overall learning experience for students and teachers. And then also we want to draw on research, real world examples, and practical insights to provide a roadmap for educators seeking to create an atmosphere where students can flourish. Next. Our objectives, though we have a lot, I promise you it won't be overwhelming. So our objectives simply are to understand classroom dynamics, to develop emotional intelligence, apply effective communication strategies, harness diverse energies, foster inclusivity and belonging, apply research-driven approaches, create a transformative learning atmosphere, and to also reflect and adapt. So I'll give you just a few more seconds in case you wanted to read over those. Okay, great. And in moving on, we're just gonna watch a short video about what makes a good learning environment. So you'll see in the video, quote unquote, a learning environment that may be great. It may not be, depending on what your idea of good is, right? But we all have differing ideas of what a good learning environment is. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. If you guys can just put in the chat if you can't hear it, that would be great, but it should go ahead and play for you.
Morgan, I'm unable to hear it.
Awesome, great. So I'll go ahead and fix that. Give me one moment.
Wow, late every day this week.
We signed CC up for this daycare, and it's on the other side of town. The traffic is...
Why didn't I think of this before? Did you know that there is a daycare center opening right here in this building?
Is there really?
Now that I own the building, I'm looking for new sources of revenue. And a daycare center? Well, I guess it's not an evil idea. It's just a regular idea, but there's no good laugh for a regular idea. Welcome to the Sesame Avenue Daycare Center for Infants and Toddlers. Ah! You remember my cousin Mose?
Welcome, children.
Were you painting in the dark?
Wait, is this your place, Dwight?
Oh, no. I like to think of it as the kids' place. Would you like a tour?
I don't think we really
Oh,
need it.
let's take the tour, Pam.
Yeah.
Come on. Here is the language skills and cognitive development area. These are English letters. I see you found our magical toy box, Jim.
These are actually forks and knives from the break room.
Jim, to you and me, maybe, but come on. To a child's imagination, that's Mr. Fork and Lieutenant Knife and Miss Fork.
And a soy sauce packet.
That shouldn't have been in there. I'm embarrassed.
Don't beat yourself up.
We come fully equipped with a restroom, feeding trough, play bucket, and room for a plant in success.
Who will be watching the children?
No one. The door locks from the outside. Escape is impossible.
Prove it.
What? No.
We're gonna head outside. Just give it a whirl. I just want to see how it works.
Oh, no.
I'll tell you this. If this works out, I think we're looking real good.
I promise you that door locks.
Okay, I apologize in advance for any extra noise. I'm in the youth center, so the students are constantly coming in and out. Okay, but so what we learned from that video was that there are differing opinions on what a positive learning environment is. So while Dwight was thinking, oh, this is great. We have creative opportunities, the children will be safe. The parents were also kind of concerned because there were some things that they would have deemed that needed some improvement. So what then makes a good classroom? Well, classroom dynamics. And so what are classroom dynamics specifically? It refers to the interaction between students and teachers in a classroom community. The purpose of studying classroom dynamics is to learn how to set up positive classroom atmosphere where students feel comfortable learning and communicating. So although our students may just be taking in content, we also need them to communicate with us and other students. And then also classroom dynamics is an effect of interaction. So the way that your classroom moves, how your students interact with you and their peers is a direct effect of how all of that communication has intertwined. So if we're not communicating effectively, you will significantly be able to see the effect in your classroom. It also involves the building of a classroom community. So this does not happen overnight. It is great to establish this at the beginning, to have the learning environment requiring respect or talking time, ending on time or starting on time, things of that nature. Those things are built. And so you want to start with a great foundation at the beginning of a semester or the beginning of the year-long class, and then continuously work up to a controlled chaos by the end of the semester. And then the creation of a positive classroom culture, again, is something that's created. You don't just set it and forget it. It's consistently working on it every day. So now in the chat box, I want you to give one sentence to explain how you build or establish transparent and effective communication within your classroom, and then we'll discuss it.
Okay, so some of the responses that we're getting is learning everyone's name and asking about their country of origin on the first day, communicating with students and the teacher, having clear class objectives, involve their native language in instruction through creating a welcoming, stimulating environment, allow students to express their opinion without judgment, set clear expectations, make sure that the students are engaged and participate, have students do an all about me presentation, make sure they know I am happy to be there. Learn students' objectives, use the whiteboard to clarify, and ice-breaking games to interact. Being clear that the classroom is a safe space, talk one-on-one with each student, use their names, celebrate contributions, and smile. That's great.
Okay, it seems like we have some great suggestions so far in terms of setting a great classroom culture, setting clear class objectives. So why are we here? What's the purpose? What are we looking to accomplish by the end of this class? Utilizing their native language and instruction. I absolutely suggest that because it's also very humbling. It's a humbling experience to realize, I'm learning a new language and trying to communicate. And sometimes you have those moments in the back of your head, like, how do I sound? Or am I saying this correctly? Or did I use the wrong word? And it really means something totally different. And so utilizing native language and instruction has definitely been a great point for me, whether I initially give the instructions in English and then do it in Spanish, or if I give a side by side on the slides so the students can match, okay, this word goes with this word, and then being able to correlate those things. Creating a welcoming and stimulating environment. This is great. And so what I want to focus more on is, what does that mean when we say a welcoming and stimulating environment? Because culturally, a welcoming gesture would be to stand and shake hands, right? But now in our modern society, we're not shaking hands as much, or a simple wave will do. So what does that mean when we say a welcoming and stimulating environment? Because what I may be doing and I'm thinking is welcoming can be offensive, or it can be pushy, or anything. So we want to make sure that we have an understanding of what that means, and that our students know that we mean to be welcoming. Expressing opinion without judgment for the students. Absolutely. So if they're letting you know, hey, I work late, or I work 2 jobs, or my child is sick, them letting you know that is them being vulnerable and having transparent communication. And so when we say, well, why didn't you take off? Or don't you have a babysitter? Things like that can make the student feel like I can't really relate to what is going on. So we want to make sure that when they are expressing those things with us, we're not passing judgment. Making sure students are engaged and participate. Okay, again, so what does that look like? Do we check in on them from time to time? Do we send them emails once a week? Do we have office hours? How do we ensure that they are engaged? So we want to be very specific about that. Making sure they know you are happy to be there. So this one is very important because we are, as instructors, people too. We have lives, we have things that may happen before we get to class. And so when we get there, we may still be frazzled from traffic or from dealing with our own home lives. And sometimes the students may get a whiff of that energy. So we want to make sure that we're resetting our energy before we come into the classroom. And making sure that the classroom is a safe space, using the whiteboard to clarify and ice-breaking games to interact. That's great, because when we have various forms of instruction, we are differentiating. So that's great. We want to make sure we're not just sitting and talking to our students the entire time. Talking one-on-one with each student is also great because it gives them that individual time to just sit and ask questions that they may not want to ask in front of the class. Having snacks, yes, having food is always a win, right? As long as we're making sure, hey, you know, does anyone have allergies or anything like that? That's great because it lets them know, like, hey, it's okay to snack. It's okay to be hungry. If you need something to reset your mind, that's great. Pronouncing their names correctly, learn all of their names. That's awesome. All of these are great ideas. And name tags, yes, the name tags definitely work. I'm a face person, so I will never forget a face, but names I struggle with all the time. So name tags are a great option. Okay, so to take us back to what a good learning environment is, right? We want to be very specific about what's a welcoming environment, what is an environment that is not welcoming, right? So in the chat box, if you can, try to post all of your answers at one time. Just explain or let us know about a time that you were in a classroom as a learner and felt uncomfortable. And then also, when was a time where you were in our classroom as a learner and enjoyed the learning experience? So if you can answer both of those in the chat box, that would be great.
Okay, so some of the answers that we're getting is, you know, the instructor not making a personal connection, disorganized, messy, too hot or too cold. A lot of comments about disorganization for what was uncomfortable, or even negative remarks about people of their own of their culture. And what they enjoyed was interaction.
We have a lot of great responses, and I'm looking through the chat about some of the uncomfortable experiences, and it seems like we have a lot in common about what we're expecting for people not to do, but it still happens, right? And so even as instructors, sometimes we may find ourselves making some of these mistakes. And so what comes next is the emotional intelligence to say, you know what, I was wrong, and to possibly even apologize to a student when you realize I could have done that differently, which we'll talk more about in a moment. And then in terms of being comfortable, I'm seeing a lot of commonalities with one-on-one time with the teacher, and not in a pushy or trying to change your mind type of way, like one of our comments said, but more so to understand what it is that you're dealing with, what you're going through, and how they can be of assistance to you. Being told that it's okay to make mistakes. Absolutely, because learning is a lifelong endeavor, right? So we're constantly practicing and tweaking and learning new ways to do things. So that's awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing. Okay. So again, going into developing emotional intelligence. So it doesn't seem as though it would be so important for us to have emotional intelligence, even in an online setting, but it is. Effective and efficient communication requires emotional intelligence. You cannot have effective communication if you don't even know what your own expectations are and who you're expecting those things from, right? So if I'm expecting my students to ask questions when they don't understand, or to let me know when they're going to be absent, I have to know that I'm looking for that and how that affects me. So if you coming to class late, or if you're not coming very often, means that I have to do more office hours, then I need to effectively communicate, hey, is it possible for you to email me 24 to 36 hours in advance when you know that you're going to be absent, so that I can either prepare work for you or what have you, so that I can have systems, I can go across my systems and processes, right? So if I know that I'm an organized person and tardiness or absences are bothersome to me personally, then I need to be able to communicate that and how the student can help us to navigate what that need is, because they may be late due to dropping their child off or due to working a double shift, and they can't get off early, so they get off right when the class starts, right? So by knowing that and expressing what your expectation is, they can then let you know, hey, I'm trying, but I have X, Y, and Z going on. And then you guys can move from there. But if you don't know what's going on and you don't communicate what those needs are, and you're reacting in the emotion, then the student will feel, well, they don't care if I'm progressing. They don't care that I'm struggling. They don't see that I'm trying my best. And then subsequently they fall behind and everyone loses, right? So you cannot help anyone else if you cannot model those strategies yourself, if you cannot model effective communication, if you cannot model powering through those strong emotions and figuring out how to communicate those things, your students are going to suffer. So as I was saying, with those strong emotions, we may be blinded to the root of the issue, and that translates into our learning environments. Okay. So if you can use the thumbs up button, I don't know if you guys have a thumbs up button, or you could just use a thumbs up emoji. If you've ever had a day in the classroom when you knew you were not in the right headspace and subsequently did not effectively instruct your students. So you can either use the thumbs up button, or you can use a thumbs up emoji if this has ever been the case for you. I mean, you were just coming in from traffic, you were frazzled, you were overwhelmed, your anxiety was going, or you just were not in a good mood, and you know on the ride home that lesson was not a good lesson, or my students didn't learn very much from me. Awesome. Keep sending them in. Keep sending them in. Yeah, so I love I love the accountability, lack of sleep, early morning class, discombobulated traffic, no coffee or hungry. I get it. And I love the accountability, right? Because Via saying, you know what? I need a second, guys. I'm going to take 5. I'm going to be right here in the doorway. I'm just going to take a second and reset, or having them work on something while you reset, but letting them know that, hey, I'm having a moment and I just need a moment to gather myself. That our students would really appreciate knowing, okay, they're still a person and they understand that, hey, when I'm frazzled or I'm frustrated and I stand out in the hallway for a second before I walk in, it's just because, it's a lot going on. I'm overstimulated, right? And overstimulation is a real thing, right? Because we're dealing with phones and tablets and laptops and emails and calls and texts. There's always something going on, right? So sometimes you just have to take a second, take a step back and say, you know what? I'm triggered, or I'm overwhelmed, or I'm overstimulated, and I just need a second. And by the communication, it can take you so far with your students. Comments are saying, yes, I felt unsuccessful and that I failed. Sure, everyone had a day, myself included. Yes, sometimes the whole class is just like, we just need a day. We just need a day of rest, right? Overwhelmed from day job, not in the past 10 years, been teaching too long, but maybe as a first or second year teacher. Okay, so you found some different strategies to kind of power through those. Illness, yes, definitely. Mental health burnout. Okay, and let me go back. Oopsie, never part of emotional intelligence and managing your emotions. Okay, awesome. So we do have some participants that have mastered emotional intelligence. Awesome. Okay. But sometimes there are ups and downs. So you may do very well for a year or two, and then another year, maybe a life event happens, and you kind of hit a mark where you're like, I'm not handling it as well, right? And so it's okay to have those ups and downs. Someone else has said, and I really learned to power through, transparent with students, but also transparent that we came to learn to have a positive experience. Awesome. So that's still part of the communication, right? To let them know, hey, I've had a day, but I'm here, I'm focused, I'm with you guys, and we're gonna make sure that we have a great learning experience. So great. Awesome. Let's move on. Okay. So with developing the emotional intelligence, some of us have mastered it, some of us are good at it, some maybe not, and that's okay. So we're gonna just do a quick chart if you have a sheet of paper. So we have moods here at the top: happy, sad, angry, and then overwhelmed or overstimulated. And I just want you to tell me how you react in the moment. So how do you react when you're happy? Is it you're smiling from ear to ear? Is it kind of more like a quiet, just enjoying the moment? How do you react in the moment when you have these different emotions? And then how you need others to react in the moment. Okay, so if you're happy in the moment, how do you want others to react? Do you want them to be happy with you? Does it not really bother you how others react? Things of that nature. So you don't have to put this in the chat. This is more so for you. But I want you to really take part in this activity, just because you may realize like, hey, when I'm sad and I'm angry, I act the same, or maybe I'm totally different and I need totally different things. Maybe it's something you've thought about before, maybe not. But let's identify what these are, so that if we have a student that makes us happy, oh my gosh, you mastered this, I'm so happy, I'm so proud of you, our words of affirmation, your thing. And then maybe letting the students know, hey, when I'm happy, I may jump for joy, or I may get loud, or I may, want to shake your hand, because we don't really hug this much, but I want to shake your hand because I'm just so happy. Or when I'm angry because I've been emailing you for 2 weeks, and now all of a sudden I'm hearing from you and I have to possibly give you bad news, right? So I'm a little angry, I'm frustrated about it. Right. So let's just go ahead and take a few moments to fill this in. And if anyone wants to share some of those expectations that they have from others in regard to reacting in the moment, maybe we'll share. But for right now, this is mostly just for your self-reflection. Okay, so we will go ahead and move past that. I'll leave it up just for a few more seconds in case anyone needs to jot any last few notes down. Maybe about 10 more seconds. Awesome. Okay. So what are some effective communication strategies that we can use to become more emotionally intelligent and thus work with our students better? Well, we could develop the ability to identify and describe what we're feeling, right? So although we may think we're angry, it really just may be we're overwhelmed. There are too many things happening at once. Someone is asking you a question here, your phone is ringing, the Wi-Fi is down, so you're trying to get set up for class, but you're kind of running late, so your papers are all over the place. So you may think you're angry, but you may just be overwhelmed, right? And so identifying, hey, what am I feeling? And then thus, what does that make my students feel? That's a great step. Next is awareness of personal strengths and limitations. So if you know that being late is a trigger, then establishing some different routines to say, I'm going to ensure that no matter what, I leave an hour or 30 minutes before I need to, so that even if I hit traffic or even if the Wi-Fi is down, it won't affect me at all, right? Or your limitations to say, hey, every time I come in here, I know I have to get the technology set up and I'm really not good with technology. So either I can utilize a different device or I can do activities that don't utilize technology as much. These are some different adaptations that we can use. Self-confidence and self-acceptance. So accepting that sometimes you may be long-winded and figuring out a way to instruct your students that is not so long-winded. So if you know that that is just how you typically explain things, then trying to tweak that specifically in a classroom setting may be a great place to start. Ability to let go of mistakes. So if you know, oh man, we were working on division and I accidentally taught them the wrong way to do it, right? Instead of maybe beating ourselves up about it, we come back into class the next day. Hey guys, I totally messed up on this. I want to just kind of backtrack a little bit. I know that that can be frustrating for you because we went through the entire class period and I did this particular concept wrong. However, I'm a person and I make mistakes too, and I'm hoping that you guys can understand that for me. So I want to make sure that I'm doing it right this time around, and we're going to take about 10 minutes to just redo it and let it go from there. If we harp on it for the entire class, then it becomes more of a thing, right? It happened, we acknowledge it, we let it go. Ability to accept and embrace change. The only thing that's constant is change, right? So we know that change is going to happen. No matter what, there's always going to be some type of change, whether it be small or large. And so being prepared and kind of rolling with the punches per se to say, you know what, this is another change. I don't typically do well with change. So communicating with maybe HR or whoever your supervisor is that, hey, when there's going to be a new change, can you give me a week notice so that I can develop some strategies that I want to put in place before it goes into implementation, right? So that you're not just hit with it like, hey, it's Friday and on Monday we're doing this new concept, right? So communicating that, hey, these are the things that I do well with and these things I don't do well with. A strong sense of curiosity, particularly about people. So if you know that a student normally comes in on time and they're typically prepared, but for the past week or so, they've been coming in late, they don't have their materials, or they're forgetful of different concepts, to notice that and to see that and to communicate to figure out if there's anything that you can do to be of assistance. Feelings of empathy and concern for others, showing sensitivity to the feelings of others. So again, our classes are important to us because we're teaching and we want them to gather all this information, but we also have to understand they have so many different things, especially as our adult learners. They have so many different things going on that sometimes class isn't at the top of their mind. And so understanding that, hey, when they come in, they kind of have to redo their thinking and check into what's going on in the classroom, and having sensitivity to that will take us a long way. Again, accepting responsibility for your mistakes. So if you mess up their name, or if you forget something that they like or where they're from. Say, oh, you know what? My apologies. I'm definitely going to work on that. I'm going to put a note here with me. I'm going to carry it with me so that every time I have to acknowledge this, I want to make sure that I get it right. And so them seeing you put in the strategies into place can help you to create an environment where, oh, okay, even my instructor can acknowledge when they make mistakes and that it's not that big of a deal. So if I mess up on a math problem or if I don't pronounce this right, it's not the end of the world. I can try again. And I won't be chastised in front of the entire class. And then lastly, the ability to manage emotions in difficult situations. So if the Wi-Fi is down and you're frustrated because now we've lost 20 minutes of class, saying, you know what, I'm frustrated, let's pivot. Okay, so I had us doing the PowerPoint today. However, instead, I'm going to email it to everyone if everyone can pull it up, or I'm going to work strictly from the whiteboard. And it may take us a little bit longer, but we're still going to get through the concepts for today. That's also a great way to handle it as well. Okay, so another reflection in the chat box, can you answer the following questions? Have you ever had a student correct you in front of the entire class? How did that make you feel? How did you handle it? And then based on how you handled it, what effect do you think your response had on the other students? So take a few moments to go over that. Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. Yes. At first, it feels a little awkward because it's like, oh no, I made a mistake in front of the entire class. But it might be actually a positive thing, depending on how the information is delivered, when for them to tell you in front of the class that you've made a mistake, right? Because someone else might notice it, but they might not feel comfortable just yet to let you know in front of the entire class. And so seeing that others can do it and they're not chastised or they're not shot down or they're not scolded for saying something is absolutely a great environment to set in the class, right? So if we have this environment where we've built emotional intelligence, effective communication, conflict resolution, right? We're creating a harmonious environment in that students are going to struggle, right? For our ESO learners, they've spent their entire lives speaking and embracing cultural norms and slang and anything else that involves speaking another language, right? And so for now, them to try to relearn all of these different things in a different way, with some that may be polar opposite of what they've been doing for their entire lives. It's such a humbling experience, and it's very difficult. And so by them having a safe space within our classroom, we can see a lot of progress with our students. Awesome. So I see a lot of commonality there, carrying the message that anyone can make a mistake. Yes, it does. It does give you that feeling like, do I know what I'm doing? Am I sure? Like, now I want to be like 10 times better because I want to make sure I'm not making mistakes, and that my students can trust that I know what I'm talking about and that I am, an expert in what I'm doing, right? So we still want to have that trust and that respect and that reliability with our students, that we know and that we are qualified to teach them. And so it's difficult when we make a mistake because we don't want to change that perception with our students. So there's a bit of a balance there, right? And so we don't want to make mistakes all the time, right? But if we are writing and we forget a word, or we put something in the wrong place, then that's certainly acceptable, and our students will absolutely understand that. Okay. All right. So next, talking about diverse energies and inclusivity and belonging, we'll watch a short video about what does that look like? What does it look like to bring different energies together?
So show us how you'd normally sell to a female client.
Okay, with pleasure. Time to learn a few new tricks, old dog.
You got this, Shroot.
Okay, you've just walked into her office and begin.
Hello.
Hello.
May I please speak to your boss?
No, she is the boss.
I am?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Mr. Hannon. How can I help you?
Okay, this isn't working for me because no one would ever believe that she would be a boss.
He's absolutely right. I'm really struggling here.
Oh, I'll be the buyer. Hello, Mr. Shroot. Nice to see you. Please have a seat.
I never sit down during sales meetings. I want to appear aggressive and imposing. I'm going to sell to you in 12 minutes.
No, actually, she'd like to take her time discussing her needs.
I will tell her what her needs are and then fill them. This is going to work out best for you if you just relax and do nothing. And once I'm finished, it's over.
Okay, let's stop here. Anyone have any thoughts?
I thought it went great.
I have written down a few questions. One, have you ever killed a woman? How many women have you killed? Please, sir, will you not kill me?
Okay, when you're selling to women, it is crucial that you listen, Dwight. Also, you want to respect their... Are you listening now?
Yes.
Okay, well, you have to show us.
That's impossible. Listening happens in the ear and in the brain. I mean, some organisms have external hairs that vibrate to indicate auditory stimulation, but unfortunately, our external hairs don't vibrate at all.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
What are you doing?
A little smile and a nod shows that I hear you. Got it?
Kind of.
Nellie, why don't you tell Dwight what we were doing earlier today, and Dwight, you show us that you're listening.
Well, we were in the warehouse where we were discussing the mural that I've commissioned Pam to paint there. We were talking about the colour schemes and the major themes we want to hit. Children of the world coming together, cutting down trees to make paper, but not in a child laboury way.
It's just up and down. Just a regular nod, like a person.
I am a person.
Of
Yes.
course, you're a personal.
Yeah.
We can do this, all right? And then we thought I can't carry on with that face. Look at it, I'm going to get nightmares with that face. I mean...
Okay, so as you can see, there are like overt, like blatant expectations of what that looks like to have inclusivity, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be where we're at the front of the class and we're pointing out every single person and every single language that they speak and all of the different needs that they have. It doesn't have to be that way. Simply building the norms and lesson and culture into the way that we teach is a way better harmonious experience, right? So we don't want people, as you can see in the video, to feel uncomfortable. We don't want them to feel like we're violating cultural norms, right? And so we may not know all cultural norms, but to be at least aware enough to where the student will feel comfortable and say, hey, according to my culture, it's not okay when we do X, Y, and Z, which is why I don't do, or if you can you please not? And so with our students feeling more comfortable coming to us with this, we can, one, make sure we're not offending our students. And then two, also create environments where we don't even have to have these issues arise, right? And they can focus on just learning, because it's enough to try to learn the norms on their own coming into the English language if you're an ESL teacher, but then also you still have your norms outside of the classroom, right? So you don't want to completely do a 180 every time you have to come into the classroom and learn. As a student, you don't want to have to do that. So by us having a harmonious classroom where, hey, when we come in, all of us will greet each other with a wave, or a simple head nod is enough. Or when everyone comes in, everyone will have their seat that they've chosen, and we'll try to keep those seats because it makes those people feel comfortable, what have you. So just setting those types of harmonious norms without being so blatantly overt and obvious can create a harmonious classroom. So what is one cultural norm that you must absolutely have in your classroom learning environment? Whether that's organization, whether that is no emails or calls after a certain time, or how students address you by what name would you go by, things of that nature. What is some norm, or what is a norm, or some norms even, that you have in your classroom that are non-negotiable? And just share that in the chat, please. Okay, respect, creating an atmosphere of mutual trust, right? So knowing that they're safe there. Okay, personal privacy, space, cultural differences. Okay, cultural norms around gender. Okay, that can be a little bit of a difficult one sometimes, because again, that's the way that they've been taught for their entire lives, essentially, right? So coming in as something totally new that they've never experienced before, right? So just gradually easing them into, okay, it will be different here, and this is how we handle things when X, Y, and Z happens. Cool. Okay, conversations surrounding race, respect. Respect is just a big one, right? And so we would think that it's something so simple, right? But everyone has different understandings of what respect looks like. And so having these conversations at the beginning of the semester to establish what respect is in that particular learning environment is great. To share their culture and you respect each country. Awesome. Awesome, everybody. Thank you. Keep going in the chat. I'm definitely reading it as I go along. So feel free to keep going. Okay. Lastly, just do one or two of these if you can, a reflection, your personality traits that are unchanging. So things that you know, it doesn't matter where I go, what class I'm teaching, what students I'm working with, these are my personality traits. I want to be organized or organization oriented. I like to have an icebreaker at the beginning of class because I really need those I wouldn't say emotional bonds, but I need to know the people that I'm working with, right? I want to feel a certain level of closeness with my students, right? To know who they are. These are personality traits that are unchanging. I need to know who I'm around, things like that. The personality traits that can use improvement. So for me, I would say sometimes I can be a little bit scatterbrained, which for my students can be frustrating because I want to be creative. I want to differentiate my learning. I want to have various methods of instruction. But for some people, it can be overwhelming. It's like, okay, we were doing this type of activity last class and now we're coming in and we have to get up or we have to do a gallery walk or, it's different. And sometimes people don't do as well with change. So that's something that can use improvement. So a current possible classroom culture norm, or positive, that should be positive, excuse me. I made a mistake, right? Current positive classroom culture norm would be that I like to have creative activity options, right? So if we're doing PowerPoints and another student wants to provide a video or they want to make a video of themselves speaking about the content, then I allow that. And then current classroom culture norms that need improvement. So again, too much change too often. So sometimes it's okay to have a routine and for the students to know what to expect. So if you do one or two of these just for your own reflection, I'll probably move on in about a minute and a half. So maybe just like one or two rows if you have time. Don't worry about putting it in a chat. It's solely for your reflection and then we'll move on. Okay, awesome. So just for time's sake, I'm going to put my contact info here, Morgan Williams, M Brown 52527 at PGCC. And then I'm going to go back to the previous chart just so you guys can finish that if you wanted to. But if you had any questions or concerns, please go ahead and put those in chat just so we can use these last few minutes to go over them if you have any. Okay, so here's the chart. It's back in case you wanted to finish this at a later time. But again, if you had any questions or comments that you wanted to share with us, please put it in the chat because I'm answering things in there. And again, my email is, I'm actually gonna draw that on here on the board so you guys can see. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions come in. So I want to say thank you all for participating in my session. I hope that it was informative. Hope you learned a lot. I hope that it was differentiated enough and that I just wasn't talking too much the entire time. But thank you guys for having me.
So on behalf of the Maryland Department of Labor, thank you very much, Morgan. It was an incredibly informational presentation and lots of good participation. So I can only imagine that participants got a lot out of it from you and from each other. So thank you very much. And for those you who are participants, just hang on. At the end, you will get an evaluation form to fill that out. And also just remember, we have more VTI sessions today, tomorrow, Wednesday, and even Thursday. So again, thank you very much, Morgan. That was a great presentation, and we really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your expertise with us.
Thank you all. You all have a great day.